live on our Q&A webcast with the Cleveland Orchestra Flute section. My name is Kristen Moore. I'm the U.S. Direct Sales Manager here at Powell Flutes. So thrilled to have this wonderful group of musicians here with me today. I can't wait for everybody to hear their wisdom, and please feel free to ask questions along the way via the comment section. But I'll introduce everybody, and then maybe we'll, kind of wait a couple minutes as we wait for guests and audience members to sign on. But I'm joined today by Joshua Smith, Principal Flutist of the Cleveland Orchestra, Jessica Sindell, Assistant Principal Flutist, Saeran St Christopher, Second Flutist, and Mary Kay Fink, Piccoloist. All are members of the Cleveland Orchestra. We're so thrilled to have them. Thanks for coming on today, everybody.
Pleasure, thank you.
So we'll, like I said, kind of give our guests signing on to Facebook a couple minutes to sign on and get comfortable, maybe grab an afternoon tea or iced coffee to get us through that 2 o'clock Eastern hump. There we go. Jess is all ready. And if you see any furry friends pop up in our screens today, I know we have not just the flute section, but some friends as well. And Mary Kay, who are you joined by?
This is actually my mother's cat, Callie. My mother moved in with us recently, and this is her cat, Callie. So now we have 3 cats and a dog. So it's pretty interesting around here.
That is a full house. Oh my gosh, Sarah and your puppy.
Yes, this is my new puppy, Winter.
Oh, and how old is Winter?
5.5 months.
Oh my gosh. And just, I saw a little bit of Sophie, your pup.
Good. I can't believe she's camera shy right now. That's
it's the important things, we have to have a little bit of lightness and happiness through our animals. So thank you so much again. If you're just tuning in, my name is Kristen Moore. I'm the U.S. Direct Sales Specialist for Powell Flutes. I have with me the members of the Cleveland Orchestra Flute section, Joshua Smith, Jessica Sindell, Saeran St Christopher, and Mary Kay Fink. So I think it's always kind of a nice first question as we are in this bizarre time, overused bizarre. What have you all been up to in the past several months, in the spring, over the summer? And you guys can decide who wants to talk first. Jump right in. Please feel free.
I'll jump in. So I just mentioned that my mother moved in. My mother fell in January at the age of 96 and had 2 hip surgeries. And she was kicked out of rehab in April, really not able to take care of herself. And so luckily I was not employed. And so I've been spending a whole lot of time in Milwaukee, helping her recover and being there because she couldn't be by herself. And then we made the decision that she couldn't live on her own anymore. So she has moved here to Cleveland. So then there was a lot of getting her, apartment cleaned out and all that entails. And now we're still kind of in the unpacking here phase. But she's visited here a lot in the past, so it's not completely foreign. And so far things are going well. So yeah, I actually the timing was kind of serendipitous for us. I don't know what we would have done as a family if I had been working full time. So.
Yeah. It's such a maybe a little overused phrase, but blessing in disguise. And we have to find those moments to help us get through this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How is, have you guys all been, do you find yourselves really inspired to keep practicing and playing a lot, or has it been like a really welcome break to just kind of step back from your instruments and, take a little breather and reconnect in other ways?
I'll dive into that one. I know from having talked to the other people that were in similar boats. I was surprised to learn about myself that I practice I loved practice, actually. I mean, I love the practicing. For me, rehearsing, the process for me is so much more interesting. Maybe, I mean, I guess I can't really compare. Performing is wonderful. You know, communicating to an audience is a great thing. But for me, what I really love about what I do is the process of building it and exploring and experimenting and all of that. So I've always loved that. But what I learned about myself recently is that I do that willingly and easily because I have deadlines to fill. And when I don't, I'm not that interested in that, like that part of the creative aspect for myself. So I'm, you know, I spent a good month or so, like I think many people in the world did, just feeling lost and trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like still learning, you know, about how to do. I'm like, I live in a big old house. I'm figuring out how to take care of many aspects of it kind of by myself. And, you know, like the kinds of things like, at the point when the sink broke, I couldn't call a plumber. Like the plumbers weren't coming to houses. And so I had to figure out how to do that by myself. And so I've done that kind of thing. Like, I actually have enjoyed learning how to do a lot of things that I had never, ever even thought of doing before. But when I was feeling most lost, I decided that if I did nothing else for this, however long it's going to be, I wanted to learn how to meditate and what that meant and what it meant to me. And so it's been helpful. That's what's been getting me through is just kind of like an introspection and a revamping of how to live in the present.
Yeah, absolutely. Meditation, you know, it's such a good skill to have, especially as musicians. And, you know, it'll be so interesting then how you can take that new skill and, you know, bring it when life goes back to normal, you know, as like a sense of grounding. And
Sure.
wow. Yeah.
And you may have noticed from some of the answers to the questions that I have that in my, like, I've always had a sort of an awareness of needing to live in the present, and but it's actually really hard to you know, kind of remember that all of the time. We all know that, but yeah. I have appreciated having the time and the energy and the desire to dive into that sort of aspect of, like, if you call it spirituality, just really focusing on how to stay here.
Oh, that's a really lovely thought. And it's, you know, you came out like with some positives through all of this craziness.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah. Saeran and Jess, have you guys felt, you know, motivated to practice or just, you know, stepping away, enjoying that time?
Oh, sorry, Jess. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I practiced on and off. I go through cycles where I practice every day and I enjoy just playing through the stuff on my shelf that I haven't looked at since I was in college, or doing old exercises or running through concertos, and then stopping completely and just working on house projects. Or, you know, I have a new puppy, which is demands a lot of time and attention. My next project is to paint my kitchen cabinets. So I've been researching how to use shellac primer and how to prep and how I'm going to do this, because it's very overwhelming and it takes skill. Like, I paint everything. I've painted you can probably see I have like a purple ceiling back there, and I've painted everything in my house, but I've never done anything that required that level of prep. So that's what I'm tackling next.
Beautiful. How about you, Jess?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, it's been coming in waves. I agree with Josh. I practice if I have some sort of a motivation behind it, you know, whether it's a concert or audition. I mean, well, that's not happening, but yeah.
What? You have something to tell us, Jess?
Oh my God, please. But what's really been helping me is teaching. You know, I've been teaching alongside with Mary Kay at CIM right now, studio classes. That's been a new world for me. I haven't had the chance to come up with different topics to teach college students. And, you know, I mean, the other day we covered a class on C-rings, and I went back into some of the archives in the NFA and discovered these new historical backgrounds that I had never heard before regarding the piece. And, you know, it was really rewarding for me to be able to share that with the studio, and, you know, it kept me interested. So I feel like I'm helping to create different classes to also inspire myself along with.
Absolutely. And we have that time to spend researching and digging even deeper past what we already know. It's a good way to like come out of this with something new. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you. You know, if you're just tuning in for our live Q&A webcast with the flute section of the Cleveland Orchestra. And as always, please feel free to leave your comments, tell us hello. You can send questions via the comment section. And hello, Pam Muncie from Muncie Wind. She said that she learned that she's a procrastinator with this extra time. So I think we can all relate to that. Absolutely. So, you know, I think as, you know, we are kind of looking back over the last couple months, if we could even look back a little bit further, and for maybe those of the people in our audience who aren't as familiar with the four of you, would you mind just sharing how long you've been with the orchestra in your positions?
If I had finished this season, it would have been my 30th.
Wow. Oh, wow. How about you, Mary Kay?
Same. Well, I guess I started in mid-season, but it's approximately the same. I started January of the same year. Josh joined in September. So
I think I joined in September, so you may have like 1 year ahead of me in a sense.
Almost a year. It was 8 months because I started in January, which was odd. But I get credit for that whole season.
Right.
So
how about you, Saeran?
I think it would have been 14 this season.
Wow. And Jess, as the newbie of the section.
Yeah, well, let's see. I won the job in October of 2018. So I guess this was my third season.
You had one full season under your belt, and then the 2019-2020. So Josh and Mary Kay, you know, both not quite totally, you know, being new members at the same time. There was a little bit of that space in there, but, you know, it must have been really interesting to have that kind of turnover in your positions and constantly, you know, shifting, or, you know, so how did that feel, both of you coming in? Did it feel very settled, or was it kind of like a new opportunity to make something new?
who's going with this one?
I'll start. I was 20 years old, so I had no idea what I was walking into. I had never had a job before. It felt totally new to me. I had the only orchestral playing experience that I had was from Youth Symphony in high school and Curtis, which is a great orchestra, but it's a school, you know. Mm-hmm. So I did feel like I was walking into, I think maybe even at the time that I started, I had no idea that Mary Kay had just started as well. So I felt like, I mean, I knew she was new-ish, but I didn't know how new, or that didn't, you know, like register for me. I have to say, like, not a lot registered. I was walking into this situation, and I did feel like I was walking into a very established, like very settled section. And for me, like, I think I was kind of blown away by how, in a certain way, simple it felt, and you know, straightforward it felt to do the job, because everyone around me was so like playing on such a high level and so experienced and so, you know, settled in what they were doing, that I just had to like make sure that I could plug into it, and so it was easier than I expected it would be.
That's how I felt the first time.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. So, well, you were asking us about, you know, the same question more or less. So I would agree that our situation was a little different because I was 29 and I had come from a job and had been subbing in New York Phil. So I was kind of, I probably was, it was still overwhelming, but it was this great feeling of such a high level of playing. And, I would say to myself, if something's out of tune, it's me, Yeah. That was kind of that made it easier than the fish wondering, So, and I was very lucky that both John Rautenberg and Martha Ahrens really took me under their wing, and they helped a lot. Sometimes John would have a little fun by giving me cues to come in at the wrong place, but mostly mostly he was very helpful, So yeah, but yeah, it's scary at the beginning, but it was really exciting too.
Yeah. So did you, pass that prank forward when Saeran and Jess joined and keeping them on their toes, little initiation?
John had a whole litany of jokes, and before Jess there was Maricela, and so interestingly those two came in around the same time, just a year apart. So it was like the same kind of thing. Wow. Years, and I was experiencing it from the other end, being the old lady of the section with these two youngsters, so to speak. And it was very interesting, and they're great. But I do remember trying to do like a lot of John's humor, and mostly them not really getting it, or
Trying to avoid getting sucked into it, I think.
And yeah, I think they just thought I was really weird. Some of them stuck. Like if Maricela was sitting to my right, I would say hello to her through the end of my flute, And there were a few jokes that stuck around, but I realized that his very quirky humor wasn't. I don't know. It just was the wrong fit.
Sometimes though, I'll find things written in my music. I mean, and I'll ask you to explain it to me, or drawings that Martha left in the back of a symphony with the conductor like sweating everywhere. So, yeah, I mean, it's really fun looking at these parts.
It's a little treasure trove. I love it. So, Saeran, I know that you were a student of Josh's, back before, when you were in school, and then went out into the freelance world and then won your job. How is that, that developing that relationship and changing it in a way?
I mean, I love Josh. He was the perfect teacher for me. He knew exactly how to help me find the right character, the right sound. We connected immediately, like I feel like as a student and teacher, and being in the orchestra with him has just been amazing. I mean, I learned even more just from sitting next to him than I ever did in school. And he's probably the single greatest influence on my playing. And sitting between Josh and Mary Kay was the most incredible experience of my entire life. When I first joined, I just could not believe how incredible they sounded together and how easy it was to sit there. It felt like, I don't know, like probably getting into a fancy sports car for the first time. I was like, I can't believe that I get to sit between these two incredible players. There are some parts where it would go from flute to piccolo, and I sat right between them, and I couldn't believe how good it sounded and how perfect and how the tone matched, and just it's a master class in orchestral playing to sit between them.
Wow, that must have been amazing. Yeah,
I still feel that way.
So Jess, we mentioned you're the newest member of the section. This would be your third season starting. And you'd previously been in positions in Oregon and Rochester, which are, of course, great orchestras, but, stepping into the revered, the Cleveland Orchestra. What did that feel like?
First of all, I should say, the first two jobs that I had, I am so thankful for. Like you said, they are also great orchestras. And I feel very lucky that I was able to play different positions within those orchestras. And had I not had the opportunity to have a piccolo job, as well as some experience with principal flute, I wouldn't maybe have had the opportunity to win this job as an assistant principal, where I'm covering all of the roles sometimes, not at the same time. But yeah, so I mean, I guess to be honest, the making it to the final round of this audition was a very euphoric experience for me, and I've never felt that way at an audition. Normally, it's really stressful, and yeah. But when the curtain came down, and I see all these people that I absolutely love and admire, and I'm from Cleveland. I've watched all of them, studied with some of them. Since I was a kid. So sharing music with them alone on the Severance Hall stage in a final round, depending on whether I would get the job or not, was like I teared up a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I was also this huge sense of relief to win this position, because prior to that I was taking a lot of other auditions, and sometimes getting all the way to the very end, and sometimes the next one I got cut after the first round. And I put my heart and soul into every audition that I took, and my hard work and sweat. So it was a really, really bumpy road, and man, what a relief to win a job with people that I love and I've watched since I was a kid, and to be home. I'm home, and I love this section so much, all three of you. Same as Saeran was saying, I mean, sitting in between Josh and Mary Kay, or sitting, I guess Saeran, you're on the other end of me, but it's an experience like I've never had before. So I'm in heaven.
I would love, it's such a heartwarming, audition experience. And yeah, as we all know, some of them can just feel like disaster. So that kind of, no matter what the outcome, I'm sure it would have, still been a really beautiful memory, but this just makes it even better. So yeah, I'd love to kind of maybe go off on a little audition tangent, if you don't mind. And between the four of you, with, I think I added up the math correctly, with about 75 years of collective orchestra experience just within Cleveland, not your previous times, which is pretty incredible. I'm sure you've all sat on some very interesting audition panels, or taken very educational auditions. What kind of advice do you have for, maybe the flutists or non-flutists in our audience that are still holding out for that audition job, or orchestral job rather?
I could totally go, but
well, you're the most recent. You should go first.
Okay. This is how I've been. I mean, I know you guys were on audition panels in the past too. But from being on both ends recently, I think what's been most important is, I guess I started to think of myself as a saleswoman. I'm selling my product to the best ability, that in the best way that I can. So even if there was a treacherous excerpt that absolutely freaked me out, I think if the committee hears someone who can sell it in a way that it's played with confidence and clarity, and this person knows what they're doing, even if it's maybe several notches slower, if it's a super technical passage, I think, in my opinion, that's maybe more impressive to hear behind a curtain, if the full package is consistent in that way. But I don't know, you guys can elaborate more, I'm sure. But it's always
that makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah, you have to convince the panel that you're a good fit. But yeah, Josh, you were kind of gonna jump in.
I think that it, I mean, yeah, that it's a perfect way of saying it. It's what we're doing is communicating, and I think that people try so hard to go into, and understandably so, that all of the energy gets spent in trying to be perfect, or trying not to make a mistake, trying to make sure that you make everyone happy, and therefore not enough energy gets spent believing in what you're doing, and finding your voice, finding a point of view, and speaking with it. Or I should go, finding your voice and speaking with it. And I think the people there are very few people who can do that in the moment. And those are the ones who stand out in an audition.
Oh, those are great sentiments. Sarah and Mary Kay, anything you want to add?
I would agree. If somebody, the people listening don't want to be aware of your stress or struggle. So the ones that can not only play well, but play with ease and joy, as hard as that is in that circumstance, they will be the ones that stand out.
Yeah, I actually remember from my audition, we could choose our own solo piece, and I was hearing a bunch of like E-Bear and all kinds of fast stuff, and I picked Syrinx, and before I went out I was like, oh my god, I've made a horrible mistake. I should have picked something flashy, but that piece just meant something to me, and I felt like I could, I felt like it showed a lot. I mean, it wasn't fast fingers, but there are other things that show that. So I think, to keep that in mind when you're choosing your solo repertoire, it doesn't have to be just, crazy fast technical stuff. There, sometimes when you play something lyrical, that can show as much or more actually about who you are and what you have to offer.
I love that. Yeah, and that's your mode of showcasing you, and I'm sure there were plenty of excerpts on that list for pyrotechnics and to really get into that technical side. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. So if we did get a question, and it was one I was looking forward to asking anyway, you all play Powell flutes or instruments, piccolos in some format. Could you tell us all what you play?
I'll start. I am fluctuating right now. I've played on a Powell since I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And Jessica has that very flute at the moment. She's borrowed it. That's a silver Powell. And in probably like 15 years ago, maybe 20 even now, bought an old gold Powell. That I used that for a while. Currently, I'm on a wood, the Grenadilla, all wood, and I fluctuate between that and the Powell, the gold. So it's either all wood or it's gold with a wooden head joint. Those are my two, the two things I'm using most often right now.
Gotcha. And we'll definitely come back and talk about that difference between your metal flutes and your wood flutes. But anybody want to jump in next?
Yes, I also play on the Powell, the wooden, all wood with the gold keys.
Beautiful.
Yes.
One of my favorite flutes.
Great flute. I love it. Yeah.
And I have several Powell flutes. I also got my first Powell in high school, the end of high school. And Jess actually owns that Powell now. That's the Powell I got my first jobs and big competition. So then she bought that flute many years ago. Anyway, when I switched from that flute, I went to an older flute that I bought from the second flutist in the Chicago Symphony. And I remembered his name, Ralph Johnson, yes. And I've had a love affair with old instruments ever since. Actually, I think it started with old piccolos before it went to old flutes. But I joined the club. I have a new wooden Powell. So it is fun when we all play on them together. And I also have an Emmanuel. So I have kind of a collection. But most often I'm playing a Powell. Sometimes I have an EV Powell, gold EV Powell head joint on one of my old Powells. But that's been kind of fun during this COVID as far as getting me to practice. I have all these instruments. I have lots of, piccolos, and I have too many instruments, but I can say I'm a collector. So it's been fun and keeps me playing because I like to compare them and try different things. And recently I had a little performance for a Hispanic festival and played a Piazzolla etude, and I chose that old Powell that used to belong to Ralph Johnson, that 1825 Powell, and it worked great. And that's what I've been playing on the most lately, which I played on for years and then kind of went away, and now I seem to be back. So anyway.
Yeah, Mary Kay, you were kind enough to send me your list of serial numbers, which is always just good, for any of our audience out there, to register your instrument with Powell. Heaven forbid anything happened to it. We can kind of help in assisting with that. But, we like to keep track of where, instruments shift to with their owners. And yeah, you have an amazing collection with a lot of history. Your 822 piccolo was owned by the wonderful Lois Schaefer, former piccoloist.
Yeah, that's my best piccolo of all, I would say. But interestingly enough, I was so excited to learn that she was the owner. But I met her once, and I said, "Oh, I play on your old piccolo 822," and she had no recollection of that piccolo. So she was probably like me, where she would, buy them and then maybe try them for a while and sell them to a student or whatever. But she had no recollection of it. It obviously wasn't one of her favorites, but it's a great.
She had many, very many.
Okay, so I guess I'm like her.
And then your flutes too, previously owned by Ralph Johnson from the Chicago Symphony, and then Paul Reddy.
That's also a really great flute. That's the one I use with the Evie Powell head on often. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, beautiful. And then Jess, so you play on Mary Kay's old flute, which, correct me if I'm wrong, you won your job on?
Yeah, I mean, now I have a plethora of Powells, and I feel like none of them came directly from me. I purchased them from different people. So maybe I need to get my very own and then sell them. No.
I think so.
I'm sure that's going to happen at some point soon. So I purchased, it's 5675, I think, right? Yeah, I purchased that from, right? I purchased that from you when I was in high school. And I was not used to old Powells. I had started on, I think, a Miramatsu, and it was definitely a different experience moving from that to an older Powell. And I took that through college. I won my job. I won all my jobs on this magical Powell. And I think, Mary Kay, you told me you won Cleveland on it too. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought that with me. Yeah, it's a magic Powell. I think it isn't actually Powell or something, right?
What? The foot joint?
The foot joint doesn't.
Miramatsu. It originally had a C foot joint, and I bought another. And then you changed the head joint, so it was a total mutt.
Yeah, it's just different. Which is really fun. But yeah, so now actually I'm experimenting. I purchased an original LaFan head joint, and I'm really enjoying it on Josh's Powell. I don't remember what serial. Yours is in the 6,000s, I think, right?
6323.
Yeah, and it's again, all of these different serial numbers. These instruments offer either like a heavier wall or easier low notes, or it's really fun to experiment. So yeah, and also I think I bought a Powell piccolo for Mary Kay that you found for me as well. I can't quite remember what the serial number is, but that got me my job in Rochester. So maybe I just have to buy instruments from you guys every year or something for good luck. Yeah. So.
You clearly have very good taste and really, know how to pick them. So absolutely. So would you mind, especially Saeran and Josh and Mary Kay, talking about, the differences between wood and metal and what that's like? And Saeran, kind of on a side note, did you win your job on a wood flute, or did you switch once you, stepped into the orchestra?
Well, no, I didn't have a wood flute when I won my job, but now that you asked that, I can't remember what I was playing on when I won my job.
I remember.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it was an Oromite Powell, wasn't it?
Oromite head joint. I do remember that. Yeah, it must have been a Powell.
I'm sure it was.
It was a long time ago. And I kept messing around with head joints for a while. So I had a Howell Roberts wood head joint for a while that I played on. And then I got, I think I had some Nagahara wood head joints. And then at some point I tried the wood Powell, and it was just better than anything else. And I bought that. But now I switch between that, and I have a Brannan white gold flute with a LaFan head joint, which is 22 karat gold head joint. So it's, the one flute weighs like nothing, and the other thing is like this dense brick. And so when I switch between them, the wood flute always feels like it's about to fly out of my hands. It's so much lighter. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, for me, as a person I sit next to somebody who switches all the time, I switch all the time, I don't know if I could pinpoint a lot of differences between them in terms of sound. I'm sure there's some things about it, but I feel like most people think there's a bigger difference because they're listening with their eyes. So I feel like I get that a lot from other people who will think that they can tell the difference. And I'm like, wow, you're amazing, because I'm a flute player and I do this all the time. And if it were behind a screen, I don't know if I could tell the difference. Yeah. It just depends on the instrument. I mean, if it's a modern instrument, like Josh and I have a modern wooden Powell, it sounds like a modern instrument. I mean, I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
Well, I do also agree that it's, for me, hard to articulate exactly. Like, I don't think that I can't list a whole bunch of differences and say, prove that this is like if I heard someone playing wood, I might recognize it, but I could be wrong too. And ultimately I play wood because I enjoy how I feel connected to it. I mean, I think that I spent a lot of time, I've always appreciated having at least a read on historical approach. And I never had access to a good, I should say that I've never really at all been interested in equipment. I'm the kind of person who will stick with the flute because it's my flute and not try to experiment because it drives me crazy. Like when I first started playing a gold flute and also had a silver flute, I made myself insane trying to decide exactly why I would choose the silver for this repertoire and why I would choose the gold for this repertoire and what was different about why, like it would just go on, and I would feel like it was impossible to make a decision. So I would just decide, look, I'm doing this for a while and it's just going to be the flute for a while. And I'm a little looser on that now because I think it's interesting to have options. But I think that through all of this, I was always focusing on not sounding like a lot, like hugely bright. I was always trying to sound, I think that's why I've always appreciated Powell, because I feel like the Powell aesthetic is dark and mellow and not like hugely metallic. And a silver flute is a metal flute, and a gold flute is a little more mellow than that, and wood just doesn't feel like metal. Whether you can tell the difference or not, I'm not always sure. But for me, it just feels better to play, and it feels easier to negotiate blending with other people on wood.
Even when those people are playing wood, or it doesn't really matter, just regardless, it's easier?
I think so. I mean, I think especially, so you're asking, would I insist that someone playing with me, another flutist, should play wood if I'm playing wood? Not at all. Like, I think, just make it work. It doesn't really matter what you're using. But I've just really settled into enjoying how the wood feels. And when I go back to like all metal, I just don't enjoy it that much anymore.
Wow. Thank you for your thoughtful answers. And, I think, Saeran, you're exactly right. People see a wood flute and they expect this is going to be totally different. And yeah, they're built to be modern, to project as loud as you need, to be in tune as any other flute. And yeah, we, hear with our eyes, like you said.
There's nothing in the repertoire that I can't play on my wood flute.
Right. Same here. And I really, that's actually because I'm that person who wants not to have to be messing around with deciding what equipment to use all the time. When I found the wood flute and I realized that I could do whatever I wanted on it, I was just completely thrilled because because I spent a lot of time trying to find my way into making my silver flute sound a little more like wood. A little less modern, a little less bright. When I found the wood and could sound silver enough with it, then it just felt like the right decision.
That's
wow. Yeah. I have some to add from a piccolo perspective. Yes. I think the difference is even more noticeable on a piccolo if you play a wood piccolo versus a silver piccolo. And I got my first job on a silver piccolo. One of those old cylindrical Haynes where the high notes just pop out. I really wasn't a piccolo player yet, but those are so easy to play. So, but the way I would describe it is, I would say the wood sound is a little bit fatter and maybe not so edgy. The silver is maybe more burnished and spinny. And that's my feeling on the flute too. It's more obvious on a piccolo, but I would say, still 90% is the person, and then 5% maybe, or more than that, might be a head joint cut, and then the material. But material does definitely there's something about certain materials create different overtones. So there is a subtle tone color difference on the material. And I think it's kind of a personal preference.
That's really helpful, I think. So we do have a question from our audience related to this. Pam is asking, is the wood a lot heavier, and would someone make a decision because of the weight?
I don't think so.
What is the wood heavier? Then I think it depends on what you're comparing it to. I mean,
yeah,
my old flute weighs a ton. It's the heaviest flute I've ever held. I remember Maricela loved her light silver flute, and my flute just weighs a ton. So compared to that, the wood flute is light, but compared to her flute, it was heavier. I think it's all about comparisons. It depends.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, the wood feels heavier than my 1825 Powell, for example. So
yeah, it all depends on the model, the material. Absolutely.
It's also a little different in the hand position too, and I have a little trouble with that actually. Just
on
a little.
Your wood flute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's funny you mentioned that. We, if they have larger hands, it feels a little more ergonomic because that tube is so much thicker, or the opposite where my hand really has to stretch for it.
Or it just maybe different than I'm used to or something,
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Pam. And just some quick hellos. We have viewers in New Mexico and Maryland. Hello, Melinda and Andrew, Luke from Long Island. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our webcast with the Cleveland Orchestra Flute section. And of course, as you've heard, we're happy to answer questions and bring them to this great group of flutists. So as now we are going through COVID and missing these live performances, whether it's playing or attending. I imagine that, especially you all have, pretty great careers so far, pretty long careers. How do you keep all the repertoire fresh? Maybe something like a Beethoven 5 or, something that is just played every year. How do you overcome that challenge?
I always want to not be the first person to dive in. So
wait, hold on. I'll just say this really quickly before you dive in. I have no answer to that because I feel like everything is still very new. Especially playing with these guys. So yeah.
We can certainly jump off of that after this then.
Answer to that. Josh might though.
I guess I don't. I think I'm good at that because I don't feel it. I don't think about it as another Beethoven 5. I mean, some of that can be dependent upon the context, the situation, the conductor. I mean, I certainly have had more, I've certainly had performances of Beethoven 5 that I've enjoyed more than others and less than others, but I think I, from the very beginning, made a really solid choice to play as if, no matter what I was playing, to play as if it was the first time I was doing it. And let's face it, like every situation really is different. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about performing and about music is that it's not always the same. It's never the same, actually. So if you can remember the aspects that sort of set it apart and make it interesting. I'm just trying to do my best all the time, and that's challenging all the time. And so the job feels new most of the time, I think.
Have you guys ever noticed too, when you, I mean, there are some pieces that I've, performed like more than 4 times or something, but have you noticed that depending on who the conductor is, if maybe there's a section they want softer, that things are brought out that you never heard before in that symphony, which makes it like sometimes this will become my favorite section, not knowing previously that, oh, the basses had this really cool, pizzicato or something that I really couldn't hear, maybe in a different hall or with a different orchestra or with a different conductor. But I guess if it were for me, playing a piece many times, that could be something to keep it exciting too, if you could listen for things.
Not to talk too much, but absolutely, I think that's actually one of the things that I like so much about my job, and it's just another way of saying that it's different every time, and therefore it's interesting most of the time.
Yeah, I think the challenge is not so much Beethoven 5 as Silent Night or something, when we do all these Christmas shows, and some of the tunes we play many times every year. So that would be more of a challenge. And then sometimes if I'm starting to feel that way, I think about a friend of mine who's been playing in the same Broadway show for over 30 years. So very fortunate.
Yes. No, that's a good way to bring the perspective back.
I wouldn't mind playing in the Hamilton pit the rest of my life, though.
Well, for maybe a week you would. Maybe 2.
Still looking forwards.
Although, I'm sure that's not without its challenges with understudies and, so many shows a week. That's its, it has its own challenges there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Saeran, anything to add or good on this one? It's all been said.
I feel like it's been covered. Yes.
Yeah. And so, maybe we just have a few minutes left, and to our audience, thank you, Michael Lynn. He's from Ohio. He says, nice to see and hear from the
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
The hometown team, and Shanna from North Carolina. So with just a few minutes left, if, there's anything you want to add as far as, it's so rare that we have like a full orchestral section like this, how, it is blending, we've talked about our different instruments, but if you feel like you have anything to add in terms of fitting together and jumping in terms of your experiences and, the different repertoire, I'm sure the audience is always happy to hear a little more.
I want to say that one of the things that I am often asked about, and I'm sure Saeran gets this too from the other direction, is like what the role of the second flute player is. And what I'm asked usually, especially if I'm sitting next, this comes up anytime I'm teaching and we're playing together. The question goes something like, do you want me to take do you want me to be a subordinate? Should I like shadow you? And my answer is always, God, no, like, please play. I want you, I need the support, and I want to feel like we're equally engaged. I don't want to feel like we're competing, but absolutely, like, you're an equal voice. And that's, I think, if both people have the same intention, that's what makes blending work.
Sorry, there's a bug. So I pull over, I'm like, ah. Yeah, I've talked to students about that before too. Usually when I'm working with kids in an orchestra, like doing sectionals, I'm begging the second flutist to play more. I'm not really sure what that's about. They think they're supposed to hide, or you know, there is an art to knowing when to come out of the texture and when to go back, you know, and you know, for instance, when Josh and I are in octaves, I try to play more than him, so he has something to play down into. I mean, you know, it's just from years of doing it, you learn, oh, you know what, when we do this, I need to be more, and then I need to back off here. But generally, just it's better to be told to play less than to be begged to play more. So
Absolutely.
I go for it, you know, like you can always turn it down a notch, but you know, don't be afraid to play. And a second player is not, you know, the second player, they're the principal of the second line of the inner voice, and that's important. And you need to know when to support the upper voice. I mean, really what's useful, and I don't know if you guys also find this, but switching around, which we've done every once in a while, is really illuminating to play principal when I've been playing the second part all the time, and you hear it differently, or play piccolo, or you know, when we are able to shift around and play a different part of a piece you've been playing the same part on for years. It's really helpful. It's really informative. So I encourage all students to try and play as many different roles as possible, because that's how you learn. I think we're also focused on trying to play a principal part, but you know, you're going to be better at whatever job you're doing if you understand how everything fits together.
That's
I
really
feel like second flute's the hardest job out of everyone. Literally,
Is.
piccolo is really hard. So is principal.
I mean, principal, whatever, but
Right.
yeah, there's no hiding when you're playing piccolo, that's for sure. Mary Kay, anything to add? Or Jess, you know, as you both kind of jump between, Jess, you know, between absolutely more than most, probably the different parts and having to sit in different chairs, and, you know, Mary Kay, maybe between swapping your instruments and, you know, going from the loudest voice in the orchestra.
Right, going from a low register third flute part to some high piccolo part. All I can say about that is it just gets easier over time. Yeah. It keeps it interesting, that's for sure.
That's true. Never boring.
Especially those quick changes where you think you might drop one of them. You know?
Well, thank you all so much for joining me today and for sharing your wisdom and your experiences, your insight. I, you know, certainly learned a lot, and so hopefully our audience did too. And just of course, next month, our next Powell Flutes webcast Q&A will be October 22nd, 2 p.m. as always, with Sylvia Caradu. And Powell's general manager, Daniel Sharp, will be chatting with her about, you know, the European flute school and how it compares to, you know, American flute playing and education and all that. So it should be a good one. But Josh, Jess, Sarah, Mary Kay, thank you all so much. The Cleveland Orchestra Flute Section. It was an absolute pleasure having you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.